Hi, this is Pete Thomas from My Safety Consultant. In this video, I'm going to talk about the OSHCR register and the importance for safety consultants. But first of all, thank you so much for the support in the last video. Put it out, it was the first video we did. It was the Home Office survey on fire risk assessors in the UK. Had some great messages on LinkedIn, some really great feedback. So thank you very much to all. I had one message that I was like, kind of missed the point here. And they said, this was in relation to 92% of fire risk assessors being male. And they said, well, 89% of nurses are female and you don't have a problem there. That's thinking, well, one, you've obviously not watched the video and gone through all the information, the points that I was trying to make. But two, it just shows that we're going to have a huge issue with recruiting new talent into the industry, and that's going to have a massive impact in years to come. So there's a lot of work to do there, but I'll put the link to the video on the YouTube. Have a look. Let me know what you think. So OSHCR register. Let's go back in time, first of all. I'm going to try and be balanced. I'm not going to try and give a hatchet job video that's just going to be controversial for the sake of it. Let's try and be balanced about this. Let me take you back to 2010. Lord Young's report, Common Sense, Common Safety. So this was a report commissioned by David Cameron. I think they were new as the Conservative Party then. Sounds about right. And they said that we need to put some common sense back into health and safety to address the concerns about increasing bureaucracy and growing compensation culture in the UK, focused on reducing burdens on small businesses while maintaining essential safety provisions. And David Cameron said, good health and safety is vitally important, but all too often, good, straightforward legislation designed to protect people from major hazards has been extended inappropriately to cover every walk of life, no matter how low the risk. A damaging compensation culture has arisen, as if people can absolve themselves from any personal responsibility for their own actions, with the spectre of lawyers only too willing to pounce with a claim for damages on the slightest pretext. We simply cannot go on like this. That is why I asked Lord Young to do this review and put some common sense back into health and safety, and that is exactly what he's done. Now, I'll explain why I've gone that far back, but the report highlighted the need to focus on safety consultants. I find this interesting that, when you look back through the good old health and safety, health and safety gone mad, a lot of those decisions, they're not made by safety consultants. They weren't made by safety professionals. They were made by well-meaning employees within organizations who had undertaken some safety training, but they weren't a safety professional. Safety wasn't their sort of core role. But for some reason, the report highlighted the need to focus on safety consultants. It's those consultants' fault, many of whom lacked adequate qualifications and proper insurance, contributing to an atmosphere of fear and confusion. Now, this is interesting, actually, because I feel like this was done in 2010. We're now in 2024. We look at the fire risk assessor survey that I put out the video on last week, and many of the same arguments are coming up again. It's the consultants that, although the consultants actually turned out to be way more qualified than the employees, all of the focus was on the consultants and what more consultants could do, but there was very little on the employees. And I feel like this always comes back to this argument that, well, a director of a business can undertake their own health and safety, and it's not meant to be onerous or complicated. There's a conflict there somewhere. Anyway, out of the Lord Young report came the recommendation to create the register, and the OSHCR register was born. It was to ensure consultant competence and promote proportionate advice. It also suggested simplifying risk assessments for low-hazard environments. So OSHCR was launched in 2011. It was a key outcome of the Common Sense, Common Safety report. It's backed by the HSE, IOSH, BOHS, IRSM, and a plethora of other professional bodies. And it was created as a kind of third-party accreditation system. for health and safety consultants to ensure they met the professional standards, had the insurance, and were competent to do the job. OSHCR was going to be a central directory for businesses to find reliable consultants and enhance the quality of safety advice in sectors requiring high safety standards. The membership fee, £70 per person, and it remains at £70 per person even today. But it required each consultant to be accredited by a recognized professional body, and it required them to be at a certain standard within those professional bodies. Now, so 2010, we got Common Sense Safety Report. 2011, the introduction of OSHCR. 2012, the fee for intervention came in. Now, I don't think anyone's ever sort of made this link or done this before. So I'm going to make the link. If you think I'm wrong, tell me why. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But in 2012, October the 1st, under the Health and Safety Fees Regs 2012, the fee for intervention was launched for the HSE. We all know what this is as safety consultants, but I'm going to just run through it very, very quickly. The whole idea was that the government didn't have enough money post the 2008 crash to fund the HSE. And so they gave the HSE some powers to raise their own money. This was to offset a reduction of investment from the government. And this was justified because it was like, I think it was put into the environmental thing, like, why should the taxpayer pay to investigate the polluter and why wouldn't the polluter pay? So the whole argument was that these businesses should pay something towards the regulation because it's the businesses that require the regulation. It shouldn't be the taxpayer's burden. Now, initially, the rate was set £124 per hour per inspector, and it covered the inspection, enforcement, follow-up activities. The rate is now £176 per hour in 2024. And it only applied when a HSE inspector found a material breach of the legislation or regulations. And businesses are charged not only for the inspector's time on site, but also for any associated paperwork, reports, follow-up inspections, and also I want to say like specialist advice and a ton of other things. There was a problem with this in that FFI was actually costing the HSE around 17 to 18 million pounds to implement. And at the time, it was only generating around about 11 million pound in revenue. And it was reported that the HSE was making a net loss. So it didn't set out to do what it had done. Now, I've not worked for the HSE, but I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall at the time because I've worked for the public sector and I know exactly how KPIs work and I know exactly how they're promoted internally. That eventually stabilized, and now fee for intervention brings in around 17 to 18 million pounds a year annually. Now, here's the thing. As a safety consultant, I've spoken to other consultants and we have seen some utterly ridiculous implementation of fee for intervention. And I don't think that's anything controversial. I think we've all seen it. You know, I've got stories where I've gone to a client site, not a construction site. It was like a holiday park. They'd had a delivery of sand on a pallet. On the day that the HSE inspector happened to walk in, the HSE inspector said, well, that's technically construction activities. You should have Harris fencing around that pallet of goods. It's technically a material breach. Therefore, here's your fee for intervention. I've seen it where organizations have phoned the HSE and said, listen, we're struggling on a question here. I don't suppose you could help us. No worries at all. We'll send an inspector down and they'll be more than happy to help. Fee for intervention. And I've also seen it where I had a client that had a site, HSE inspector walked in, they said, we've identified a material breach. Okay, what's the material breach and how can we rectify it? No, I will put it all in a report to you. A few days later, HSE turned up en masse. I mean, there were 4 or 5 of them. It was like they rounded up as many people as they could possibly find in the office, from inspectors, senior inspectors, occupational health specialists, and it was actually hard work to get them off site. They were there for days doing investigations. At the end of it, they provided a fee for intervention, which was absolutely astronomical because it covered per hour of time for all of the specialists and for a ton of other work done. And we've all seen this. Now, my point is this. How does this square against the common sense safety report, it just doesn't. It completely flies in the face of it, because actually the enforcing body just seemed to do a complete U-turn on where they stood with common sense a couple of years later, and businesses left, right, and centre were being slapped with fee for intervention. As I say, let me know if you disagree with me. I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts and opinions. So it seems to me that by 2012, the Common Sense Common Safety Initiative had all but gone out of the window. And as a result of that, and caught up in the fallout, was OSHCR. And I don't think OSHCR ever really recovered from where it was initially as a great idea. And it was a great idea. It just didn't get off the ground. Dame Judith Hackett spoke about OSHCR in 2016 when she left the HSE, and I quote, "If there was one thing I would like to have landed better in my time in this job, it would have been OSHCR, because I don't think it has done what it set out to do at all. I have my doubts as to whether OSHCR in its current form can deliver. We would probably be better off to have a much more radical rethink and a look more closely at what expertise is needed and how that's defined. There are real high-end experts, but then you get those who are more general. The good ones impose and sell through fear." Now, I disagree with Dame Judith Hackett on that last paragraph regarding the sell through fear, because I don't think it's always the consultants that are to blame for making poor business decisions. I think a lot of the time it falls to employed safety professionals within organizations. And I'm not talking senior safety professionals. I'm talking people which safety isn't their core job. It's a bolt on to what they do. They've done a little bit of training, and then they're asked to rewrite all of the risk assessments for the organization. And there's this almost disproportionate approach to it. But in terms of whether OSHCR can deliver in its current form, I think I'd have to say I agree. And I definitely agree about having a more radical rethink and looking more closely at when expertise is needed and how that's defined. This is one of the problems, that competency among safety consultants has not been defined anywhere. No one's ever agreed a standard. So the standard that's required to be on the OSHCR register is not the standard. It's far in excess of the standard, I would say, that's required to be a safety consultant. That it doesn't match, and therefore the register only contains those consultants who are CMI or FIIRSM or above, so either chartered or fellowship level. Yeah, I know some phenomenal consultants who are Tech IOSH. I know some phenomenal consultants who are Grad IOSH who aren't interested in progressing up through to chartered status. They're not bothered because their clients don't need it, and it's not necessarily relevant to their role. But the shame for me is that this was 2016, Dame Judith Hackett said this, 8 years ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The site hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. And then in 2021, IOSH took full control of OSHCR and conducted a strategic review to improve its resilience. All of the other organizations that were involved seemed to take a step back. I think it's recognized that it hasn't achieved what it set out to achieve. And even when I try to find OSHCR on the HSE website, I can find it in like the catacombs of the website. But then even the HSE say, HSE is not responsible for and cannot guarantee the accuracy of information on sites that it does not manage, nor should the inclusion of a hyperlink be taken in itself to mean endorsement by HSE of the site owner, or any content to which it points. So when I started doing the research on this, in 2012, 2013, 2014, OSHCR had around about 1,800 members. I swear I checked the OSHCR register a few weeks ago and it had just shy of 900. I checked this morning and now it's got 850. The register of membership is declining dramatically on a regular basis. And, I've seen a few posts on LinkedIn recently questioning the efficacy of OSHCR and the register and what it set out to achieve, and really questioning what is the plan to change this in the future? And it just appears like there's no real answer. But here's the thing. OSHCR, I don't think, was ever set up as an advertising platform. It wasn't set up to generate leads for safety consultants. It wasn't ever a marketing tool. It was like a third-party verification system. It was designed so a consultant or a business owner can go, hang on, is this consultant qualified? Are they going to give me good advice, or are they going to give me burdensome advice that's riddled with blue tape? Or are they, and are they insured? But the issue is that the business owners don't tend to know that OSHCR exists, so they don't find it. And then when they say to a consultant, are you qualified? Are you insured? They will go, yeah, here's a copy of my insurance and my qualifications. Fine, do the job. So I feel like consultants have been disappointed with OSHCR because it's not done what they thought it was going to do in terms of promoting their business. But the reality was that OSHCR was not ever set up to do that. Just while we're talking about insurance, and in terms of insurance verification, I think there's a real issue here. And I'm seeing this from fire safety. So, we know that the insurance for fire risk assessors has increased dramatically. There was a report a couple of years ago that it's 10x in price. I know that I can go and get insurance online for 200 quid as a safety professional or as a fire safety professional, because I just type it into a comparison site and it will give me the insurance for 200 quid. But anyone listening to this will know that that insurance will be absolutely riddled with caveats. There will be restrictions, exemptions, small print, a ton of things that I can't do. And if I was to go online and put in that search engine and say, yeah, I'm a fire risk assessor, I work in airports, I work in schools, I work in hospitals, I also provide fire extinguishers, I do fire risk assessments for external walls of HRBs, high-rise buildings, I would never get insurance. That insurance would 10x, it would multiply dramatically. One of my concerns about insurance verification, and one of the things that we've been thinking about at My Safety Consultant, is that insurance isn't there necessarily to protect the consultant. It's there to protect the client. If all we do is provide a certificate of insurance that says £5 million PL insurance, how does that protect the client? It doesn't necessarily, because they may still fall foul of the small print. And if they are to bring a civil claim against the company, they're bringing a civil claim against a limited company. And the limited company has got limited liability. So unless it's massive, it's only limited as far as the value of the limited company goes. I don't know. I think this is a growing issue that is something that we need to address as an industry, as a profession, and as consultants. But again, I don't think the insurance verification actually achieves that, to be honest. So now then, we've got insurance verification that doesn't achieve the process, and qualifications that are checked, but there's no actual base framework as to what qualifications are required to do the job in the first place. So a lot of the challenges towards OSHCR from LinkedIn have been around where the consultant money goes. Now, OSHCR is itself a limited company. It's been mentioned online that it's not for profit, although I don't believe it has charitable status. When we look at 850 members at £70 each, we're talking around about 60k a year. And the feedback online has been that, well, that's break even. It's not making any money. It's just breaking even because it's paying for the services that are required. And most of those services, again, there's a disconnect between what consultants want and expect and what OSHCR actually provides. Because consultants are expecting that £60,000 to go into advertising and promoting the website to promote their business. But it's not. The money's going into things like answering telephone calls and auditing members to make sure that they actually are still insured and qualified. There's no money left. After the £60,000, there's no money left to actually make any improvements to the platform. So unless there's a substantial investment of capital, the platform is never going to change. The other thing is at £70 per person, it's actually quite cost effective. But if you're a business and you've got 20 consultants, you've got to pay for each of those consultants. So that's, £1,400, and then it's not very cost effective. And the other thing is it doesn't advertise your business because it looks at individual consultants' competence, but it doesn't look at the actual businesses. So if you've put a lot of effort into setting up your business as a consultant and you've hired other consultants, it's just going to advertise them as individuals, but not the business brand that you're trying to build. OSHCR was established to bring common sense to health and safety. And I still think it provides a great resource for verifying consultant qualifications, but I just feel like its influence has waned in the industry. OSHCR needs to pivot, but the question is whether it has the money or the willingness to stay relevant in the consultancy space, particularly when there's 800 consultants on OSHCR and yet they've got over 40,000 members worldwide to look after in terms of IOSH. Now, I've tried not to be too unfair in this video, but I just wanted to be really honest. I think OSHCR has got some real problems. As a former OSHCR member, always hoped that they would improve, always hoped that they would change. But the number of members seems to be going one way and the writing seems to be on the wall, and without a clear strategy, without a clear plan as to how the site is going to improve, and without any obvious money to be able to improve it, I'm just not sure that it's going to do it. If you've got any value from this video, please like and subscribe on whatever platform you've listened to. If you didn't like it, then definitely like and subscribe, because I guarantee you that I'm going to put some other stuff out that you don't like, that you're going to want to see. My whole aim here is not to do a hatchet job on anyone, but it is to just be honest about the challenges in the industry. And at My Safety Consultant, we're here for the consultants first of all. If something's not helping consultants, but it's taking money out of their pockets, hard-earned money, then as far as I'm concerned, it's not good enough and something needs to change. Thank you very much. Those are my opinions. As always, I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Cheers.